I'm Angela. I am from Sydney, Australia, and I've been a yoga practitioner before I moved here for about 5 years, and I've been living in Malaysia for the last 3 years. The style of yoga that I was used to before was very different to what I found here. I was used to a style where I stretched and I pushed and I forced my body to do things that now I just cringe thinking of, because there was absolutely no connection to my breath or listening to my body. It was forcing my body to do things whether it liked it or not. And so when I came to Malaysia, I was looking for the same thing because that's what I knew, and I was good at it. So it was something that made me feel good. And when I walked in, I tried a number of studios here in Malaysia, and I'd almost given up, and then I walked into Yogshakti and I was in a class with my beautiful teacher, and my head was saying, oh my goodness, what is this? But there was something in my body that was awakened. I watched the teacher move in ways that I'd never seen before, with lightness and with freedom and with a smile, which was quite different to the stern faces that I'd been in a yoga room with before. It was very serious business what we were doing. There was so much joy in this woman's eyes, and my body just wanted to move like that. So despite my head telling me to never come back, I kept coming back and I kept showing up. And slowly it started to trickle into or around. I started to get a taste for what this was, what it felt like to move our bodies in ways that feel good, and to listen. And I used to hear the words, listen to your breath, and I would cringe, and I would then force my breath and make it however they wanted. You know, if that someone was teaching and you inhale, exhale, I was doing all the right things, so it looked like I was breathing. But the truth was, until I started to learn how to breathe properly, I couldn't listen. And I was aware, as I started to learn how to breathe, that there was so much fear for me in taking the breath from my chest down into my belly. And so I'm very conscious now that when I'm teaching, which is crazy that I've gone on to learn how to teach this style, but when I'm teaching now, I'm really mindful of when you invite people to sink into their belly, that there can be a lot of emotion that can arise, and fear is usually the one that keeps the breath up here. And so slowly I started to move my body in ways that felt good. My body, the benefits of this practice, you know, my body, it feels secondary to me that yes, I have become stronger, I have become more flexible, I'm doing things that I never thought were possible. Yes, it ticks all of those boxes, but the difference about integrative yoga, and I love that it's called integrative yoga because it absolutely integrates into every aspect of my life. So it's the perfect name for it. Not only, so on the mat, it's a combination of different techniques. So we're integrating mindfulness, movement. Our meditation is happening as we move through the practice. So I'm not asking or being asked to do my exercise and then sit on the mat at the end and meditate. So it's mindful movement, and it's moving from our spine. So we're using the Scaravelli method, which is all about freedom in our joints and movement happening from the inside out. So seeing our legs and arms as extensions of our spine and everything being connected, it is unique because yeah, there's nothing like it. So integrative yoga, I think why I love it so much and why it's changed my life is because this is the first method that I've been able to take off the mat. Anyone can show up in a yoga room looking the right way, doing the fancy stuff. Can you do the splits? Can you do the headstands? Anyone can do that. This is a philosophy that we take off the mat, and but we need the mat, we need the practice in order to have the skills to take it off the mat. And so the yoga room has become, and has been for the last 3 years here, my haven. Being on my mat has been my safe place to start to explore. So when we move in this method, a lot of it starts with hip opening, which is again quite unique. The amount of time we spend opening our hips, and I used to hear that and go, oh, here we go again. But you know, they say we store our emotions in our hips. So for many of us, again, there's a not willingness. I sort of thought, goodness me, if I open my hips, what am I going to find? And I realized as I started to get in touch with the emotions, you know, the sadness and the grief and the anger and stuff that was stored in my hips, with my breath I was able to let it go. So coming back to our breath was the biggest gift. That's the thing I take away from this practice the most, is my learning to breathe properly, breathing with my mouth closed, so nose breathing all of the time. That has allowed me a stillness, energy beyond anything. It's like, even if I've had little sleep, you know, I had 2 babies and was up feeding all night and would still come and teach here the next day, and people are like, well, how are you doing that? I go, well, I nose breathe, that's one thing, and it's the yoga, what this gives to me. Integrative yoga integrates into every aspect of my life. So what I learnt about myself on the mat has absolutely transformed my life off the mat. Prior to finding integrative yoga, I had done numerous courses, anything that was around self-improvement, I was signed up for it, had counselling, done all of that stuff, and still didn't feel great about the person that I was. And what I loved about when I found integrative yoga is that, and what stood out for me was all of the stuff that I'd done before was only in my head. So integrative yoga is the way to get out of your head and into your body. And what we learn when we're not in our head can absolutely change our lives. So what I learnt about myself on the mat was, I'll never forget my teacher coming up to adjust me, and I was standing there early on in the practice, you know, standing there with my arms like this, and she said, relax, and I said, I am. And it was that moment where I realised, this is me relaxed, this holding tight. I'm not even breathing. And I think tears just formed so quickly, because I will never forget that. I realised that was me relaxed on the mat and off the mat, was tense, tight, fearful, and not breathing. And so slowly, you need to be patient with integrative yoga, because and the beauty about it is that once you're hooked, you'll just keep, I realise now I've got the rest of my life, so there's no rush, but it's a slow process of letting go. And So what I learnt as I learnt to move on the mat by letting go and by surrendering and by allowing and by creating the conditions in my body for it to move in ways that felt good, the more that I could do that off the mat. So the more that I, in life, have learnt to let go and to not be attached to how things should look, the same way as in a pose. Oh, this is what the warrior looks like. There isn't a right way, it's how it feels. And integrative yoga takes me to a whole different level of practice off the mat. And the styles that I've done before, I've never wanted to practice off the mat. I've never known how to. Everything I learn on my mat in the yoga room has been helpful in my life. So I've learned how to breathe. I've learned how to let go. I've learned how to allow and to trust and to move from the inside out. And so I find that when things look different or circumstances change, I'm less attached to that because I have found this place inside of me. That's the other magical thing about this practice, and I don't know any other practice that emphasizes from the get-go how important it is to listen to our bodies, and when we listen to our bodies, how we connect to our own inner teacher. And that's also the cool thing. So I don't now rely on being in the room with my teacher or having to be in this space as I'm getting ready to fly my family back to Australia after 3 years here. You know, when we moved here, I left home and I never thought it would be possible to find anything that remotely resembled home for me. And I realized through integrative yoga that once I made that connection to that spot inside of me, that's where home is. And so I take it with me wherever I go. I don't rely on being in this building with my teacher, and you know, that's a bonus because this place has been like another home for me. But the home inside of myself, the teacher inside of me, it's transformed my relationships because I had spent a lifetime trying to fix and change and help people. My career before as a social worker was all about helping people and fixing them and thinking that I knew better. And now that I have learnt integrative yoga, I sort of laugh and I think, who was I to think that I would know for someone else? When I teach now, so I've gone on to learn to study integrative yoga and to teach. And when I teach from that spot that says, I absolutely know my body best and I know what works for me, and I'm going to offer and hold space for you to find that same teacher inside of yourself. It's funny, I did the teacher training having no intention to teach, and I was teaching the week after. And I think that was the best thing for me, because otherwise I would have gone from here back up to here and said, you can't do that, you don't know enough, and I wouldn't have ever taught. And so when even saying, do I plan to teach when I go home, I have no view on how it's going to look when I go home, but I know that I have awakened the teacher inside of me and I can't not. So I have no idea how I'm going to even create the space. I've got 4 little people, little boys. We have a room that we're hoping to turn into a studio, but there's nothing in concrete as such. But I feel absolute trust and knowing that I will teach integrative yoga for the rest of my life, because it's awakened something inside of me, joy that I never thought was possible. And I always would have described myself as a happy person, and people would have described me as a happy person. But until I learnt to experience, we can't have joy without this grief and the sadness. And I had done a lot of dulling of sadness, grief, anger. And I didn't realise that in dulling that, I was also dulling the potential for joy and love at its most magnificent, in the most magnificent realm. I sort of thought, oh no, I can do that, but I'm not going to do that. And that's the beauty about this practice as well, is the yin, and it's got the yin and the yang and the duality of all of it, the in-breath and the out-breath. And that's why our breath teaches us, because if we're not breathing, we die. So it just keeps going, and I have to keep coming back and receiving my breath and letting go of my breath. And that's what I do now in my life. There's this joy, oh my goodness, I'm receiving this moment, I love it, and I let it go. Oh my goodness, I'm overcome with sadness and receiving it, but I don't become sadness anymore. I don't become the emotion. I used to be so attached to today's a good day, so everything's going great today, I'm good, and then the next day wasn't as good, and so I would spiral, my mood would change a lot. And now I ride the wave of life with so much more ease and grace. And I would never say that about myself normally, because I ploughed through life like the warrior, and from the outside it looked like I was doing pretty good at life. And I still have the strength and courage of a lion, but I also have the softness and gentleness of a butterfly. And I feel like this yoga has unfolded me in a way that I now can be as big as I want to be without feeling like it diminishes the light of someone else, because when we're connected to that spot inside of us, we know everyone else has that. So it doesn't make me better because I'm talking about this and I'm talking about this magnificent style of integrative yoga. It just means I've made the connection and I stay there more. And when I do that, I invite people in my life to do the same. So I've attracted new people, new friends, and new relationships that I, again, never thought was possible, because I'd spent a lifetime showing up the way that I thought people wanted me to. And funnily enough, that kept people at a distance. And yet when I've been the most real and the most vulnerable and the most seen in my authenticity, I have attracted the most abundant relationships where people are going, oh, I want to see, and they say, I just want to be around you, because whatever you just give me permission just to be me. And that's the beauty about this practice. And I wasn't fearful when I finished the training, and I'm still not fearful about leaving, because once you've made that connection, so integrative yoga allows us to make the connection to ourselves, and the reconnection. So we were born with it. Everyone's got that spot, and we just spend most of our life forgetting it and being drilled out of us. No, you've got to be a certain way, act a certain way, be quiet, be perfect. And reconnecting with that spot inside of me now, I take so much comfort in knowing that it's always available to me. So, words. For once, I'm a writer and I'm good with words, but words don't even begin to come close to describing the impact of integrative yoga on my life. I can assure anyone who is willing just to show up and to keep showing up, that the changes will be, it's been like a domino effect for me. So these changes that have then spread beyond my wildest dreams to relationships and corners of the globe. You know, I have friends now around the world, and they're still friends back home are saying, why you're coming home and you sound so peaceful, and how is it? And I'm like, it's the yoga. It is absolutely integrative yoga. And they say, oh, you look fantastic. Well, thank you, but I can't tell you what it's done for my mental health, my emotional health, my whole well-being, my spiritual connection. And you know, this also, it doesn't matter what you believe when you walk into a room in integrative yoga. And we are in a Muslim country, and so we have people from all around the world with different religions, and it's not about religion, it's about spirit, and the spirit inside of us and the spirits around us, and that's what connects us. So this transforms to everyone. I practiced integrative yoga pregnant with twins, carrying an extra 20 kilos and teaching until the week before I delivered them. So it's not about weight. You know, I often hear people talk about yoga and they say, I can't do it, I'm overweight, or I can't do it, I'm not flexible, or I've got pain. When I was moving with an extra 20 kilos, I'd never felt lighter than when I moved on the mat with a huge belly in front of me. And I absolutely believe it's because of the way that we learn to breathe in integrative yoga, the way that we learn to move from our spine, so the lightness, the freedom in our joints. So there is no excuse. If you are a human and you're willing to show up and to keep showing up, then this absolutely will change your life. So I call it staying on my mat, and how I stay on my mat in the room now transforms how I stay on my mat out of the room. Yeah.